Hey, we are live. Welcome back to Honest Advent Chats, everybody.
Yeah.
Super pumped to be back. Feels like a long time since we were in this space.
I mean, at least 7 days.
I know, at least.
It was a 7-day quarantine.
That's right. I'm Josh Scheib, and along with my wife. Oh, hold on. Brandon's frozen. There we go. Oh, man. We are super pumped to be back tonight to chat with the three of us. But as you can see on the screen, there's a little box that says Scott Erickson loves you. And we'll get to Scott in just a minute. But I'm Josh, and I'm in C3 Kansas City. Aaron Snow, C3 North Atlanta, and Brandon Cole in C3 Fort Worth. And we are super pumped to be able to have the author, the creator, the artist, Scott Erickson, joining us tonight as we talk about this fantastic book, Honest Advent. So, Scott, are you there? Would you mind?
Hello.
So good.
Great to be with you all, and in my cozy chair.
That's right, man. That your new art space back there, your pink room, your pink closet is looking awesome.
Those look good. Creative womb in there. Yeah, right. You can't see. I guess because this is movable, we can do that thing.
It looks a little salmon. Is it pink?
It's pink.
Pink. How close can we get over here? Oh, wait. Hold on.
Can you roll? Can you roll?
It's very long. This is beautiful. There it is.
You're doing great.
Is this like Blair Witch version? Like a Honest Advent version of Blair Witch?
Yeah. Who's that kid standing in the corner? Yeah. There we go.
Man,
it's my Wes Anderson inspired drawing room. Nice. Now I'm all cockeyed. Okay. Well, great, everybody. We'll move the camera again.
That's awesome, man. Well, we want to jump right into it, and we were just thankful to have you give up your evening. It probably feels like you're on a perpetual digital book tour since this thing came out. Since you haven't been able to be in as many locations as you'd like to have been, I'm sure. So podcasts and Zoom chats.
Yeah. I had one podcast today with Brandon's dad, and then it's funny. My wife today was like, "Is it bothering you that we haven't talked much about your book? We can." And I was like, "I talk about my book every day. Like I'm okay. We talk about you and I have conversations that I don't have with anybody else.
That's right.
We don't have to talk about my book. Yeah,
but if you want to, yes.
If you want to praise me, yes. I like it. That's good.
Okay. Well, Scott, would you mind who is Scott Erickson, also known as the Painter? Is the Painter now your last name? When's that going to be legally changed? Who are you?
Apparently, whatever your social media handle is, that's what you become.
That's right.
My last name's Erickson, and there's actually a lot of Scott Ericksons. In fact, hold on. Out of this, one of the most famous one is a pitcher. Scott Erickson.
Let's go.
And he's my internet arch nemesis.
Arch nemesis.
I just have that in front of my computer to be like, let's SEO that guy out. Scott Erickson, lots of us around. But it came about because 15 years ago, I was on a tour with a bunch of musicians, and I made paintings during the shows, and they would introduce everybody like, this is Mort, he plays drums, Neil, guitar, Scott, the painter. And that's kind of where I grabbed it from.
That's awesome.
But I make my living as a professional artist, which is a mystery to most people how you do that. But I think of it in three categories. One, I'm a painter, illustrator. So I'm visualizing things that actually what I really focus on is visualizing the people's spiritual journeys and what is the particulars of a spiritual life. And then how would you create a visual vocabulary for that? I'm now an author and have a series of book projects I'm working on, and then performance artist, just to complete the whole thing. No, but I tour before COVID and speak and do performance art and a bunch of things like that. So
yeah.
So that encapsulates kind of what how I like to say I do a lot of things to make a little something. So that's how it is.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's how we came into contact. Was you were in Kansas City, and it must have been summer of 2019 for a Say Yes show.
Yes.
And
I missed that last year in Dallas. By the way, I'm still
oh yeah, I know your dad. I was
it takes a lot of strength to get to.
Yeah.
So we have your live painted image of the casket with flowers growing up out of it.
Oh, that's great.
Hanging in our living room. It inspires us every day.
That's great.
and so just been in love with your work, ever since. I don't know how I stumbled across it on Instagram, but thinking about this book, Honest Advent, that came out in October, so just almost 2 months.
Yeah. Not really.
As you were contemplating it, as you were composing it and writing it, and then finally the deadlines started to actually become reality.
Yeah.
As you're putting all that together, you didn't know what 2020 would be like.
No.
At this point, knowing what this year has been, do you think this book is even more important? Do you think it's hitting people in a way that you never would have expected, even as you were drawing and writing?
Yeah, there's a relevancy that is baked in that I couldn't have been in charge of. I mean, where this started from was about 4 years ago, and there were some similarities. One, we were finishing a long and exhaustive, divisive election. We had the Syrian civil war, so we were seeing all this displacement and destruction. We had multiple mass shootings, Zika virus, Flint water crisis. So there was a lot of real tragedies and hard things. And then it was like in November, I walked into, I believe, a Target, and everything was decorated like Christmas. And I was like, oh yeah, Christmas, because it's the brand of Christmas. That's Western society every year.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of Christmas. I'm one of the nerds who we were just listening to Christmas music. I have it set as a speed dial in my car. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm in. I got lights up. I got a tree. I had a tree November 1st. I put it. Put it up this year, and so I'm into it. But there is definitely this certain kind of brand of Christmas that seeing it and being in the world in the world I found myself in, I just felt like I was like, this feels really irrelevant to the world. It feels like it doesn't speak to the complex and chaotic world I find myself into, and not even just like the shallow Santa story or overly done. And I'm fine with the Santa story. I think it's great, but like it's like really overdone. Like how many movies do we need about it? What kind of technology do they have in the North Pole? Like,
exactly.
We should get some of that. But it's even like the imagery in my own Christian tradition just felt very like safe and sanitized. It felt like it wasn't even really about human lives at all. This was kind of about these mythical human lives, these cleaned up ones. And at that time, I had this deep prayer that was like, what does Christmas mean anything? Like, does it have anything to say? Is it just a distraction from real life, or does it actually provide hope and comfort? And is it poignant to a real, honest existence? And I think my question also was, is it still happening today? Like, is Christmas, I say this in the book, is it a memorial service or is it a birthday party? Did it happen once, or is it something that's still happening today? If you go to any of your church's kids, kids Sunday school and ask whose birthday is Christmas, they'll say it's Jesus. So we infer that it is a birthday party. And so I was like, where are you in the midst of it? How can we find you? How are you incarnating still in our world? And at the time, I say I'm not a woman, but I'm married to one, and I've witnessed 3 births and pregnancies. And I was like, pregnancy is great and wonderful, but there's nothing safe about it, and it's risky, and it's painful, and there's a lot of fluid, and it was this kind of vulnerability that I was like, everybody ever has come into the world through this like vulnerable way, and this invisible holy mystery incarnated through that exact same way, human vulnerability. So maybe the place we can still find that incarnation is in our vulnerabilities, or in the places of human vulnerabilities. And so one of my muses as a teacher is that the reason we still tell any of these old stories is because they're not just stories about back then, they're stories about right now. Still happening today. And so this book is less of a book that's like, how did things happen 2,000 years ago? It's more a book about like, how is this happening today? How is this still, how is Christ still coming in our midst? And letting these very, there's not a lot of verses about the incarnation story. It's only filed at maybe 3 chapters, So how do we take this little bit of the story and let it illuminate our context now? And find those similarities. And so that, and as a visual artist, I knew I needed to sidestep the juggernaut of the Christmas brand, because like there's no way to like fight against it, nor do I want to. I like the traditional songs and the decorations and the appropriated pagan rituals that we Christianized long ago, and I'm all into it. But like, I just wanted, like, there's a great Russian word called astronomy, and astronomy, it's like saying astronomy, but if you hate M's. And if astronomy is, it was created by these Russian authors, and it is the art of making that which is familiar unfamiliar again.
Wow.
And that's what really good art is when it's like, it's showing you what you're like, I know what this is, but I've never seen it from this angle, or I've never seen it from this side. And I wanted to astronomy Advent, or astronomy the incarnation. I needed to defamiliarize the story that I've known my whole life. To rekindle the wonder I was longing for.
To see it again in like fresh eyes, like you've never seen it before.
Exactly.
I love that emphasis on rekindle the wonder, because I think, like anything, because we live in such a, what's in front of us, like what has our attention now kind of life, that it's easy for our wonder to shift. And so what actually is supposed to stimulate and create and establish that wonder is actually the very things that lay the most dormant in our life. And it's all the other things around us that are actually captivating our attention, which is actually not in a healthy or obviously a beneficial, approach, but more so damaging to our mental space and our physical space, which ultimately leads to our soul space. And so I love that rekindling the wonder, and it's looking at this incredible story through a fresh set of eyes to allow ourselves, even in some of the prayers, right, and the liturgical prayers and the contemplative prayers that we pray now, that are just allowing us to rekindle that fire, that flame, that wonder that is found in Scripture. So I love your emphasis on that, and your approach to looking at this story through a lens that, we all know you were familiar to on the same side as you, right, as being dads, husbands that have walked through that journey. But to see it through that lens as well, it's so powerful.
And having worked at churches and been a vocational minister, I know that one of the things every year is the church staff going, how do we do this different this year? Like it's a conversation every year. And
Undiscovered Christmas Carol, we all need to find.
Right.
The story we didn't know. And then put that on a banner and come Christmas Eve.
Right.
It was a bit of like, and that's when kind of how this, after I started putting these images and meditations together for 4 years. And then at the end of last year, I was like, this is a book. So put a book proposal out, got a deal with Zondervan. But that happened in April. So I was compiling all this like right at the beginning of COVID. April, May. And then, so I knew it was going to come out, and I was like, this is the year that I really want to help facilitate this weird moment to be a part of a church or a leader of a church and all of that. So that's where I think it's really poignant it makes sense right now. Yeah.
Did you grow up with Advent being a word you use? I didn't grow up use Advent. We would always read the Christmas story. It was a very big deal for us, but Advent, just the season. So almost for me, I think I'm introducing some in our church, not just to honest Advent and Mary and really making this human and vulnerable in the ways that maybe we haven't always done a great job of. But Advent itself, the idea that we are waiting with wonder and creating space for it, is that something you grew up with, or is that something
maybe? I grew up in a Lutheran church, so but pretty evangelical. Yeah, I think it was there. Like, we did the 4 Sundays of lighting the Advent candle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know if there was it was really described, except we're doing this lighting candle thing. So it was probably there. It's only as I've gotten older and found a lot of formational joy from these kind of liturgical church season that become more poignant.
I echo Brandon as well there. Like Advent to me was like the 24 days on the little like Christmas tree box that you open up and you got a piece of chocolate, and, or a Lego. And so I think even for us, I've been saved for 21 years, and to really over the last couple of years, probably kudos to Josh, because he's known as the rabbi in our circle, to really allow for us and challenge us to look at this differently. And you're bringing a whole nother level and another layer to it in a way that's so relatable. And as we said, it adds a vulnerability that we can all connect with and relate to, and feel permission to get vulnerable in a space of the wonder with God. But also, I think within the context of relationship with one another, with our spouses, with maybe our small group, or maybe a close-knit group of friends that allow for that to really start to happen and see true healing happen out of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I've shared this on Instagram and some other things, but I think why this avenue of vulnerability is because we're really in touch with our vulnerabilities right now. Like, there's a lot of comfort, like the way that modern society functions is a lot of things have to be working at the same time to allow kind of ease and comfort. And when they stop working, we're very aware of, hey, this is not working. And I'm I think the metaphor for me this year is like, it's like your car breaking down. And because when your car breaks down, you're all of a sudden aware of like, whoa, I travel long distances and don't even think about it. And once this thing is gone, like, it's like a day's walk to get back where I was
right.
And I think, there's this brand of Christmas that's always telling us like, be cheerful and get the right gift and have the right setting and get all these right things. And then you'll have the successful Christmas and you'll be filled with cheer and complete it. And that's going to be really hard to do this year. And I think we're really aware of, we're like, probably I'm not going to be with my extended family, not traveling. And then, let an Enneagram 4 artist bring up, but like also because of a global pandemic, like every day we're reminded that we can die and is really close. And that's a conversation we love to ignore. Yeah. And we're not being able to. And so we're getting in touch with this like thing that we don't really want to give a lot of time to, but all of these vulnerabilities bring up these deep conversations that is what we would call prayer, or is the honesty that is going to bring us into the wonder of Christ in our midst. And then we see that Jesus was not just some first not disembodied, and then not insulated from the whole thing. And that's what, like, this is my thought, and this isn't in the book, but my thought this year is like, what does it say about a God that's willing to start the conversation with humanity by saying, I need you to take care of me for a really long time? Wow. Like this invisible God coming, this Yahweh coming into the world, and it starts the conversation by, I'm weak and vulnerable and I can't do it without you. Yeah. Right. Like, what does it say about a God that is wanting to start the conversation that way? It says that God is for peace and God is for human flourishing, that God is participating in life, that God honors the stages of growth, these kinds of things. And that's amazing. So when we find ourselves in a stage of growth, in a stage of weakness, in a stage of not knowing, we're like, oh yeah, I have a God that relates to that or understands or has empathy for it.
Yeah.
Wow. Scott, when you look at your book and you know, obviously you've invested a lot of years into this. This isn't just something that kind of like came to you, you know, like overnight. You know, I've been following along in each day, and I started on the 29th, so I kind of went with the traditional approach.
Yeah.
But when you look at the chapters as you've outlined them, is there one for you that was like that was the first one, that was the one, that was like the one that kind of just brought this whole thing together, that maybe transformed thought, you know, made you think differently about the totality of your book? Or
well, you know, it happened over like 3 years. So at first I started with like just my being a witness to pregnancy and birth. So it was, it was me not trying to be like, I understand what it's like to be a woman, but I was like, here's what I saw alongside of a woman who was going through this, and wanting to give honor and reverence to that process. I mean, I think the image of this, the chapter is assumptions, and it's very, it's probably the shortest one. I think Prince of Peace is shorter, but you know, and this is fun. I'm actually preaching on this Sunday, but it's fun because it starts off with like, there's many assumptions about Christmas. One is we think that, you know, it's assumed that Mary rode on a donkey, but it doesn't say she did. It's assumed there was an innkeeper, but it never mentions one. It's assumed there were 3 magi, but it doesn't give a number. It's assumed there's a star overhead when Jesus was born, but it doesn't say that either. It was assumed that Jesus was born in a stable, but all it says he was laid in a manger, and that could have been anywhere. So there's all these assumptions about Christmas, and then I think it leads to, there's all these assumptions about a spiritual life, which is, and some of those are very unhelpful, which is like, I need to be better. I'm in the way of God's plan for my life. My lack of religious excitement is keeping me from participating. You know, like I should be something else. Other spiritual people have something I don't have. All of these things. And in that, I say the antidote to assumption is surprise. Like throughout the whole story is a surprise. It's a surprise that life comes from barren places. It's a surprise that God asks meek nobodies to participate in big things. It's a surprise that you're given everything you need to accomplish what you'll need to do. It's a surprise that messengers come and find you along the weird journey of your life and help you out and let you know you're not alone. And it's really a surprise that nothing can keep us from the love of God. And I think I end that saying our assumptions believe there's something that must can, but surprise, there's nothing that can. And I think that is, at least for me, the key to the Christian faith I have, the living God I know, is that like, oh, it's the grace that nothing can keep me from love, that from God love, and that brings me endless wonder to that. So I think that it's probably like in the middle of the book, and I think it's the cover for a reason, because it's about, you know, this is like, you know, when somebody's like, Mary doesn't look pregnant enough, and I was like, well, you're not huge right away, you know, like in fact, most of your pregnancy you just look like you ate too many donuts, you know, like.
I never told my wife that, by the way.
You're never allowed. You're not supposed to.
And hey guys, if you're single and you want to get married, and you do get married and you have children, never tell your wife she just looked like she ate a bunch of donuts. Just rule of thumb.
I could be in a delivery room with a woman in labor, and I would be like, so is something happening? Like I would never.
Don't assume.
Ever.
Don't be Kramer. on
No.
Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever. Yes, that's like a life rule. Never yes. Never yes. But I love that this image is like when Mary is like she just I think it's like when she's going to Elizabeth or you know, she's in this like kind of spot about like, is this really happening? You know, is this really happening? And I think that's a lot of, at least the spiritual journey I've been on is quiet moments where you're like, is something actually happening? Is something actually growing? Is God actually paying attention to my life? Yeah. So I think it symbolizes that a lot.
I love that. I love that you picked that chapter. That was today's reading, by the way, if you started on the 29th. So just a shameless plug. But even from the perspective, you know, if we look at the vantage point, and I just to close off that question, I would love to imagine Joseph in that moment too. And as a father, that first moment where it became real for me that my wife was pregnant, right? Like she told me, and there was that, you know, emotion and that excitement and that like, oh my gosh, this anticipation. But then it is that moment where, you know, you in that image, like you're talking about, right? Like there's those moments where all of a sudden you start to see it and you're like, oh, wow. Now I'm beginning to see the outworking of something that's happening inward that's about to radically change our life.
Yeah.
And so the outside perspective, which is what I love about your book, is it causes us to think about it from so many different vantage points.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you can put yourself in any one of those seats. And so I love that you picked that chapter in particular. I was hoping you would, because that was obviously the cover. So when I got to the chapter of Assumption, I was like, I can't wait to dig into that. And so it's brilliant, man. Such a powerful book.
It's such a odd, you know, there's not a lot of verses. So the verse that references that is Elizabeth going, well, how am I so favored that the mother of the Lord would come and visit me? And there's this kind of like surprise about that. Because Elizabeth is also like going, I never thought I'd have a kid.
Yeah.
She's also partaking in something miraculous, you know.
Yeah.
Zachariah was involved, which, you know, and they didn't have Viagra back then. So that is kind of miraculous. So you know, but he's also partaking in the miracle. Like incarnation has this like ripple effect. It's not just Mary, but it's Joseph and their family, and then relatives, and then, you know, towns and other people's occupations and people working at the temple, and then like, you know, these magi in another country, and it's just like this, and that is I think that's also a great metaphor of like, you know, the transformation you're being invited to is for you, but it's also for those closest to you. And then you know, when you step into when you say, may it be so according to your will, it leads to all this kind of ripple effect about like, well, then it's enmeshed in a community and a family and in a conversation and in politics and in all of these things that keep going and going. And that's why we find ourselves in that same kind of incarnational story.
Wow.
I know Josh has a question. I love that, man. I think one of the beautiful things about doing this book together and doing it with these guys is that there is a communal aspect to it. And even the seasons of Advent or Lent or whatever, ordinary time or any of these things that we talk about and talk through, it just reminds you that this was never meant to be done alone.
Right.
And what God does in you, he's doing in another. And that should in so many ways feed off of each other. And to me, honestly, I'm being kind of forced to come face to face with what I have never actually respected to the degree that maybe I should have, or at least I like the word wonder better. But really just take into account, it forces me for a month to really, has that ripple effect happened? Has it rippled on from the birth to the death to the resurrection to on and on. And so I've
us too.
I know that's more than I just love. I love amazing. Am I free some more?
Yeah.
Just you. It's all right.
Your mindings are amazing. It's great.
But we still love you.
That's awesome.
Scott, I'm curious, you know, knowing if you grew up in a Lutheran church, even if it was a bit evangelical, and to the point where you are in your life right now in your faith journey, what were some of those voices or influences, whether it's authors or teachers or whatever it might be, that that have helped to cultivate a book like this in your life? I know that, now you're a spiritual director. Mm-hmm. You're certified. Certified. It's official. Yeah. But that's not just an ordinary person's journey. So yeah, what are some of those things that have helped you along this way?
Yeah, there's definitely some authors and speakers that I could reference. I think what was it? 4 years ago, I found myself in obscurity. Mm-hmm. My wife and I lived in Portland. We moved there because I got a job at a design agency. I had been laid off from that job. I had been kind of going solo, independent artist, helping out with the church kind of. And then eventually that had like a space in the church and it went away. Mm-hmm. And I know lots of pastors, so people always hook me up. But then I ended up getting some friends of another church said, you can use this basement. And I built out a little studio in this basement with no windows, and they kept their trash down there once a week. So it smelled like garbage. And I remember being down there, and, the thing about obscurity is that nobody cares what you're doing. And I remember thinking that it's not that nobody cared about me, but it was like, nobody cares what I'm doing because I'm not involved in anything. I'm just by myself. And the question in obscurity is, well, what do you want to talk about? Like, not who else is talking and how do you help them? It's like, what do you want to say? And I was like, there's a number of things. I was like, one, I don't like how most of the culture I'm in, I don't like how it talks about God. It just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like there's this like way that you're supposed to talk about God. And I was like, that's not even how I talk. So I don't fit that. And then I was like, I don't like the imagery. It just feels like it's not real or about our lives now. And so I in obscurity, I was like, this is how I want to talk about these things. And I had read these people before then, but I would say like voices like, Richard Rohr helped me a lot in Franciscan practices. Mm-hmm. Frederick Buechner allowed his kind of whimsy in the way that he talks. It's like a roller coaster. It's kind of like this ongoing, like run-on sentence. And his way of describing faith and spirituality felt like akin to me. Anne Lamott and her realness and yet her deep love for Jesus was also a really helpful voice. Nadia Weber in her, like, I want to be the pastor to the rejects. And because I feel like a weirdo. I had this moment, I got invited to speak at this great group called Christians in Visual Arts, SIVA. It was in Grand Rapids, and it was this arts conference. I was on a panel for an hour, but I got to go to the whole thing. But I remember as it started, and the first day, it was just like art professor after art professor giving lecture after lecture, just reading a paper about the importance of art. And eventually I was like, I'm sorry, is this an arts conference? Where are the weirdos? I just wanted like a Doc Brown from that to come out and be like, hi, I made all this stuff. Thank you. 'Cause that's how I'm a haunted person. Like that's why I'm making things is I'm releasing the haunting. And I just was like, where's the weirdos? And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is exactly how I feel at church. The Christian in Visual Arts Conference spent so much time trying to convince themselves that what they were talking about was important. And I felt like church and Christianity spends so much time going, this is the true way. It spends so much time patting itself on the back. And I was like, yeah, but where are all the weirdos? Don't get me wrong. Church is one of the places still you can join if you're a complete oddball. And there's plenty of people there that are oddballs. But like, it was more that I just was like, isn't anybody else going through this bizarre life? Like I am? And then when I looked at the story of Scripture, I was like, oh yeah, it's all here. It's been interpreted by people who feel like they needed to leave out the weirdness,
right? Wow.
In the mystery and the absurdity and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not out. I just found myself in a conversation that stopped making sense. Okay, there's other strains of conversation that make sense, me at least, and so I think for me to make this book was for me to, and I know it's like a pun, but for me to be honest about Advent, to be honest about what I'd seen as a husband and a father and a partner, and what I'd seen as a spiritual person, and be honest about the chaotic and crazy world I find myself in, going, does this matter? Does this matter? So, and then the art, and I could list some artists like Andrew Hem, Blaine Fontana, Calma is the street artist in Brazil, you know, and so their kind of art has influenced my art too. So there you go.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Brandon, do you have I know you had something you wanted to.
Oh, no. If I can talk fast enough to beat the freeze.
That sounds like a book title, Beat the Freeze.
No, I think the weirdness fits into the wonder. I don't think you wonder at things that make sense. I think you wonder at things that go beyond what you think about, beyond where you expect. And I think the space that Advent creates is where you find it. And I think that's what your book does. I think that's what your art does. And I think so much of what I'm seeing lately, Josh, has been helpful for me in this, is just creating space.
Yeah.
And without the space, you don't have the one. You don't have the creativity. And so I'd be curious. Am I frozen again?
You're back.
A little bit. Tell your kids to get off their iPads.
Yeah.
No, I already did that. I snuck away while you guys were all talking. I've already taken care of the
You're
Wi-Fi.
good now for like 30 seconds. I bet you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, quickly, how did you figure out to embrace the weirdness? How did you kind of go, this is what it's going to be, and I'm going to lean into it?
In the book or just my life?
Just in your life, and probably it's weaved its way into the book.
I'd like to think, in the words of David Brooks, that the world is much more enchanted than we could ever hope or imagine. I'm a person who's had a couple mystical moments, drug-free, where I was in a prayer time. I went into a trance, and I met a fake Jesus at first, and then I met real Jesus and saw a bunch of things that was that really transforming, and it was all very weird. And then I don't know. I'm a creative, so I've been around a lot of like freaky deaky artist types who are expressing the truth or trying to make sense of it, and I've appreciated their take on things. And then, you know, like if you read Ezekiel, you're like, oh, this is performance art, you know, like there's performance art pieces in there, like lay on your side for like a year and a half and make a little model of Jerusalem and siege it every day with like your poop and stuff like, you know, like that.
I did it. Yeah.
You're like, that's great. I hope he graduated from art school, you know, like that's straight up performance art stuff. And I don't know. I've had enough friends die of cancer at young ages and things like that to just really call the BS card on a lot of presumptions about what this is supposed to be. Yeah. So it is this. Yeah. I've been thinking about this today, which is, I was talking about this with a friend yesterday, but I've been thinking about it today, is that it's interesting to me that Mary, immediately after the angel leaves, she goes and visits Elizabeth. Probably because like she's trying to corroborate what the angel had said, like, oh, Elizabeth's pregnant, I'm going to her. But I think after that moment, she was just like, that was weird. I need to go talk to somebody else who's talked to an angel. Because exceptional experiences can feel really lonely. Like they can, you'd be like, I can't believe that happened. I'm so different and nothing else has changed. And you just feel like alien or like really lonely from that experience, and you want to, and it's totally normal to go find other people and commiserate with them and going, am I okay? Like that just happened to me. And I think that's the weirdness that we're talking about, is that, and that happens with very particular things, from what doctors see, from what soldiers see, from what see. You know, that's why we have family reunions. That's why people get together at certain conferences to commiserate about their unique experiences they're having. And I think it's, as I've partaken in a lot of different occupations in my life, I've been a teacher, I've been a waiter for a really long time. I've been a pastor, I've been a yard landscaper, you know, and like, I'm really thankful for those kinds of experiences. But I think in that, everybody's kind of having this exceptional experience and feels a certain loneliness. And what I see, at least in faith, and what I see in church, the magic of a community is that we come together and we realize we're not alone in this weird, that like for some reason we've, in our very material bodies, we've had this like supernatural kind of encounter. We're trying to make sense of it. And I think that's the magic of the weirdness, I guess. Yeah. Is that kind of solidarity we find in it.
Yeah.
Scott, I love your honesty, obviously, and you know, you use vulnerability and transparency, but I think I would define weird as relatable. Because I think, to your point, you alluded to some other trades or some other arenas that would, no matter what your background is, you could be classified as weird in that particular arena, whether it's corporate America or to the arts or the medical field. But some of those experiences actually allow you and help you to understand the importance of being relatable to a community of people, a group of people that God's actually gifted you with the ability to connect with them on a real level. That allows for you to share with them the wonder of Jesus, which then allows them the opportunity to experience that for themselves. And I think that's one of the things that we've discovered. And I say we, as in the three of us, but also myself and my wife, in that the church has done a great job of actually cutting off the weirdness of every different arena or profession, and hope that they'll bring that level of experience or aptitude or capability to the church and help it build the church. When in actuality, our responsibility is to empower the gifts that God's blessed people with, so that they can go into their world of influence and to bring the good news.
Dropping Ephesians 4 right there.
You know, and so I think that's what I love about what you just shared, is that we can all relate to that, because we could all be classified as weird. I can be weird in the corporate space because that's my background. I'm passionate about it. But it actually allows me to be relatable to a community of people that you might not be able to because of your background, but that's okay, because that's the beauty of common unity, coming together to stand together and work together and operate within the context of the kingdom of God and partner with heaven to invade the earth so that we can see renewal.
And we don't know what kind of secret mystical moments everyone around us has had. I remember this one time I went to this delightful physical therapist, because I'm 43 now, but when I turned 40, my knees are like, oh, we're done. And so
wait, I turned 40 in January. That's not like for everyone, is it?
Get ready. Get your runs in now. So I've worked with a couple of physical therapists, but this one woman, Denise, she like, I'm laying on a table and she's like massaging my knee and we're just chatting. And then she tells me this moment where she like was considering killing herself while she was in college. And she just said, like, she kind of cried out and she's like, I'm sorry, you're so disappointed in me. And she's like, I felt this physical presence wrap me in a hug and said, I've never been disappointed in me. And I was showered with love and grace. She's like, that transformed my life. And she's just telling me this while she's like rubbing my knee. And I'm like crying on the table, like tears are coming down my face. She's my physical therapist. But like, hidden all around is people's interactions with a living God. And it's right. It's like that. Like we should spend more, like I've tried to spend more effort, like going, trying to go, I bet you've had some kind of interaction with God that I don't know about. And I would like to find that out, because I bet you have something to teach me about that. You know?
I don't remember which 20th century theologian, maybe you know this, Scott, who said, I think it was mid 20th century.
Wait, could I not know this?
You might know it, Brandon.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to eliminate you guys.
Is it Bono? Is it
Eminem? Oh wait, sorry.
He said the Christian of the future will either be a mystic or there'll be nothing at all.
Oh, I have it written down somewhere. Yes. Is it Thomas Merton? No, it's not Thomas Merton.
I don't think it's Merton. It is a Catholic, though. I'm pretty sure.
I definitely don't know. Clearly, that you know that they didn't ask me to verify it.
It's Henry.
I think I had a book about. Yeah.
Why don't you go search that up real quick?
Okay.
Roll over there.
You're right back.
Not purpose-driven life. Not
But I think that's true. Is like, I think Christians get very skeptical and scared of the word mystic or mysticism because we think it's this new age. It's this, and the reality is it's somebody who's experienced God.
Yeah, right.
Or the divine, and so we don't know what experiences people have had because maybe they're like Elizabeth, who nobody else has experienced this before. So who am I going to tell about this?
Yeah, right.
That isn't going to think I'm crazy. Oh, right, an angel came and talked to you, and now you're magically pregnant. Like, so I think even to have Mary come to her, confirms even Elizabeth's experience as well as Mary's, and
they're both barren women, one hadn't had sex and one had sex and it didn't do anything, So like they're both of this potential is being opened up.
Yeah.
I don't want to do like a flower.
Yeah. Can we delete that from the video? That was hand motions are probably.
Can we edit that out? We can.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, edit. Okay,
Don't let it get on the internet. Perfect.
Scott, but I think what you're doing though with your book, and I think what you're doing even just with your story is you're allowing for people to experience Jesus in a relatable way. But I think it also is establishing. There you go. I knew that. Actually, I was going to say Carl.
Thanks.
We go way back, Carl.
He's from our church. I'm just clicking.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Did you have to take credit for that? What if she actually started at my church and I sent her to Fort Worth and didn't tell you?
Yeah, well, that'd be weird.
Anyway, but I think what you're doing is you're helping people connect to Jesus in a real way, and then I think it's allowing them to go start the journey of discovering that Jesus throughout his whole life was relatable in every way.
Yeah.
And he was the most transparent. He was the most vulnerable. He was the most authentic. He was the most real. He was the most relatable person ever to walk the earth. And I think that's the kind of invitation that we're receiving and that we're invited into, to have that kind of intimacy, that kind of relationship with Jesus is so powerful. And I think it starts right here in this moment. And you've done such a beautiful job at that.
Thank you. You can donate on Venmo at Scott the Painter.
That's right.
Wait, how come Josh? Wait, you said Josh is getting Venmo. How come I got it.
He sent it to him, and then he sent it to me. That's how it worked.
Well, I will say that one of the, and this has happened to me over the last few years, partly in spiritual direction training, but, and I made a couple books with my friend Justin McRoberts about prayer. Mm-hmm. And our premise of the books was like, prayer is not getting God's attention. Prayer is awakening to the voice and work of God already in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that like spirituality, or even like Christian spirituality, doesn't have to be, is not about like trying to get right with God or get God's attention. It's about awakening that God is already working in your life. And that's a different mindset than I think. I love the community I grew up in, but that's not what I learned. And so like, there's a great, I mean, it's in Catholic, it's a Catholic practice, but it's just called the examen. And the examen is just to at the end of every day, just go, did I see God anywhere today? And one of the questions you ask the spiritual director is like, where did you notice God at work in your life in the last week or so? And if somebody says I didn't, and be like, really? Let's go into that a little bit more. Really? You didn't at all?
Yeah.
It presupposes that God's already involved in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on.
So what if we actually adopted that? That's why Jesus, before he gives the Lord's Prayer, he's like, don't be like the pagans who just talk and talk and talk and talk. He's like, your Father already knows what you need before you ask it. So you pray. What he's saying, he's like, this isn't like a shopping list of things you need to say. This is a reality you're reminding yourself that you're living into. He's like, your Father in heaven already knows. Like there was a season in my life where, I have small children, so I have to wake up early to get any quiet space. And there was a season where I stopped praying. I didn't say anything, but probably for about a year, I would get up early in the morning, make a cup of coffee, and I'd just sit in my living room in the dark and just go, you already know. You already know. So what else do you want to talk about?
Yeah. Wow.
And I would practice being in the you already know.
Yeah.
And that what that did to me it was very transformational. Most of the mornings, where there was silence, but there were some very profound answers at that time.
I love that, because what you're alluding to there is that it's the difference between trying to get to God versus recognizing that we get to walk with God.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's such a practical, just transformative thought. Like, you don't have to live to get to God. You can actually just realize that every moment you get to walk with him.
Yeah. Yeah. But so here's a couple, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I don't know if I totally believe that. Let me give you a couple practices.
Yeah.
I'll give you like a spirit practice and an actual physical practice. Spirit practice is this. Somehow inside of you, you have a way to talk to God. You have like a portal, a door. We could use the metaphor of a telephone. You have a telephone. You have a line to talk to God. Who gave that to you? Did somebody come along in your life and go, now you can talk to God? Or has it always been there? The answer is it's always been there. It's already embedded in your being, in your soul, your spirit. So you've already come into the world with the ability to communicate with God. That means there's an intentionality. That means that line had already been set.
Right.
It's something that you have to earn or take care of. You can cover it up. You can block it out with all the noise and ego and fear that comes along with life. For sure, you can ignore it. You can ignore the phone call, but you have a phone in you. And then when we could take that farther, is like, if you have a phone in you that you didn't get, but it was already given to you, then probably everybody else does. So you don't need to go around trying to give people telephones.
Yeah.
But you can come alongside everyone you meet and go, what do you answer the phone?
Yeah.
So good.
What do you talk about? What happened?
Right,
That's a much different stance in life. That, because there can be a lot of like religious guilt that like, hey, you're on an airplane. I know you just don't want to talk to your neighbor, but you should really witness to them, and there's that's based in like, I have to give them a telephone. No, you don't. You could think about like the questions or things that come up and just be like, or not, I don't know, but just like go, hey, God, if you want to ring that phone in them and make me come alongside, sure, I'm open to it. But if there's a whole So there's that. There's this kind of like it's already in there, and then a physical way to experience this. It's already there. This like God's already involved in your life is that you can find your heartbeat, and you can find it in your chest, your neck, your wrist, and if you can't find your heartbeat, I would call a doctor. But like if you just sit and you feel your heartbeat for a bit, what you'll realize is that what's keeping you alive is something you're not in charge of.
Yeah.
There's actually this organ in you that works all on its own without your permission, and it's what sustains you. You didn't go to the store to get it. It was given to you by your actual birth. So you could say it's a grace. It's a grace that's been given to you that like the sustaining of your life happens without you being in charge of it. Our breath we can kind of control, but it works on its own. And then you could take it layers. You could go even this planet's at a certain distance from the sun, and it orbits at a space that allows life to flourish. So there's so many things that are sustaining your life right now that you're not in charge of. Grace after grace after grace.
Wow.
You've been given the grace of a telephone. You've been given the grace of a heartbeat. It's all right there. Like God's already involved in your life. So what does it look like to pay attention to that grace? And what does it mean to listen for the telephone call? And I think those are like a couple ways that you can just kind of practice. Like, I don't have to try to get to God. God's already involved in my existence.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That's beautiful. Well, Scott, we're coming. This has been amazing. We're coming down to our final few minutes together, and we're so appreciative of your time tonight. I do know you've got another writing project that you're in the midst of, or maybe about to be done with.
No, not even close.
It's the written version of your Say Yes show.
Yeah.
And tell us a bit of, a few minutes about the show maybe, and then what you're trying to do with the book.
Yeah. Well, so performing's on pause, but and in fact, if you want to see it, you can email me. You can find it on Vimeo. It's hidden in there. And there's no password, but if you just look up Say Yes, Scott Erickson, you can find it. And you can watch a version of it. But I started doing this thing called Say Yes, a liturgy of not giving up on yourself. And it's a lot of things at the same time. It's trying to identify, like, what's this voice inside of us that's trying to stop us from moving forward? What happens on the other side of a death of a dream? What is this path of desire? There's like this historical, traditional, like Ignatian path of desire is the way that God's speaking the loudest of your life. But it's about this moment where, like, life didn't turn out the way you hoped it would, and your dream died, and yet you still feel this deep pain, this deep desire to move forward. And how do we overcome those voices, those arguments? And in a lot of ways, talk about like being a weirdo. Some of the muse for it was like, I wanted to make a church service about suicide because I've never been to one. And I was like, what would a church service about suicide look like? I was like, it can't be boring because you don't want the audience to be like, man, I want to kill myself. This is boring. Like that would seem like it's so I knew it had to be honest and weird and funny. It's trying to be a comedy as much as I can. It's a cool art show, storytelling event about this kind of journey. And what I found in my own depression, my own suicidal ideation, my own spiritual journey was that mental health practices and spiritual practices are kind of the same thing. Like, you can get up every day and have an exercise routine that keeps you mentally healthy, but eventually you're going to get to the existential question of, well, why? Like, what is living? Why life? And so they go hand in hand. So I started developing this from my own personal journey of trying to not give up on myself. And actually one of the catalysts for me to really put time into it is when Anthony Bourdain killed himself, because not that I'm trying to be a chef, but he represented a lot of what I hoped being a maker would look like. And his suicide called out like, hey man, it's not going to fill you either. So you got to find a different engine to do all this. And I found that it really resonated with people. Anyways, I got a 2-book deal with Zondervan, and so that's the second book I'm making. It's a big task to translate a show into a book. It can be a lot more expansive than a book, and it's going to be highly illustrative. It's not going to be a comic book, but it's not going to be like one picture and then lots of words. It's going to be pictures and words interwoven throughout the whole thing. And I'm really excited. So that's what I'm after. Christmas is over, and I can stop doing Zoom calls. No, in fact, like in the background is the script, like is the thing I'm writing.
Oh, nice.
But that's what I'm going to be working on hard for the next few months. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely plug your other 2 prayer books with Justin McRoberts. One's called Prayer, And one's called
Brilliant.
40 Days with the Lord's Prayer.
How convenient.
Man.
Prayer.
Yep.
40 days of practice. There we go. Good introduction to developing prayer routines. And then May It Be So. Yeah. 40 Days with the Lord's Prayer. Similar format. Yeah, they're really fantastic.
Yeah, they are. And
very simple. Yeah. So
yeah.
go check those out.
That's right.
Anywhere books are sold.
All the good places.
All the good places.
That's awesome. Brandon, Aaron, I feel free to wrap anything up. Any thoughts you've got?
No, I just had one important thing. One of my guys texted me and said they appreciated your taste in beer. So, and I guess he has enough of it that he noticed by just simply you picking it up at one time.
Boston Beer Works really great. All of their beer is gluten free. I'm not gluten free, but
it's
really
props for saying it.
I had a long day. Okay.
Probably because you had to talk to my dad. I know how that feels.
I started at 6 a.m. I made breakfast. I made lunch. I took kids to school. I changed diapers. I made dinner.
Really experienced Advent.
Yeah. I did 2 podcasts and I wrote a sermon. I earned this beer.
I'm with you. No, man, I think it's brilliant, and I know our church has benefited from it. We've loved this season, and I'm going to stop before I freeze.
Wait, did you freeze or no? Oh, okay. Because you actually got the timing down perfect. No, Scott, just echo these guys, man. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability. Thank you for your work, man. Honestly, just your willingness to take a different approach at this and really open our eyes to the wonder of Jesus again. And I know for me and for our community and for those who I've talked to, and I've had a few people text me just in this conversation who ordered the book, who have kind of been like on the fringe, and they're like, I know you keep talking about it, but this obviously put them over the edge. And maybe it was the beer, maybe it was the weird, I don't know.
They just need to listen to you more.
But brilliant, man. Just thank you so much, and really appreciate it. It's an honor to meet you finally. I'm thankful for the opportunity to meet you.
I have good friends in Atlanta, so I'm hoping to get there more often.
When you're here, you let me know, man. I'll show you a weird time. I mean, a good time.
Perfect. Well, I'm really humbled and honored that you all are using my book and find it valuable. And that's I make a lot of things in a room by myself, and my only hope is that it helps people get to their experience with God, So that's great. I'm really thankful for that. So thanks for having me be a part of your community tonight. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And then we're still live.
We're still live.
Brandon, we're still live, Brandon.
Brandon left the show, but we're still live.
He really did leave.